Did I scare you? Good, because I'm trying to set the mood. We're going to be talking about fear today. But before we get into that deep dive about fear, just doing a quick recap of all the things that we've talked about so far. We talked about how emotions work, what the etceteras are, what EC is, a little bit of an overview, a simplified overview of trauma, and now we're going to go into a deeper dive around fear symptomology and diagnosis. Some of the most common fear-based diagnosis includes phobias, OCD, paranoia or paranoid thinking, as well as anxiety and all of the sub-genres of anxiety, as well as anxious attachment disorder. And outside of diagnostic criteria, more pop culture terminology, there are terms like people-pleasing, and a little bit of imposter syndrome. It could be under fear, but it could also be under grief, and also just having low confidence or no confidence, and also feeling guilty all the time. And some of the ways that you know that you may be dealing with some fear-based symptomology is if you're constantly feeling doubt or confused. Those are great ways to know that you are rooted in fear at the moment. Aside from those couple of pointers that I just mentioned, anxiety is very physical in nature because it puts you in, or fear-based, anything fear-based, it puts you in a fight or flight mode. It fully activates you in a sympathetic response. You're completely in a threat response, which means your body is set up to either run, protect yourself, or and sometimes some people freeze in that kind of response, and it's expanded to fawning and flopping, but I don't want to get into all that stuff. But basically, you have some perceived threat in front of you, and your body's preparing to get through that threat somehow. And that would include changes in your breathing patterns, which will change a lot of things in your body. It'll give you a bit of brain fog. That's where some of the confusion might happen. It will make you hyper-focused on one thing because you're trying to find that threat and get through it. It will increase your heart rate. Because your body's pumping blood quickly to get oxygen all the way in your body, and so you can fight off whatever perceived threat is showing up. And you're going to have muscle tension because your body's tightening up, getting ready to get through some kind of threat, right? And on and on and on. Sweating and nervousness and all these kind of symptoms. Basically, it's very physical and it's highly energizing. Even if it gives you a freeze response, it's still giving you a lot of energy. Your cortisol hormones and adrenal hormones are running, coursing through your body. Your blood, your heart is pumping really fast. You have a lot of energy. Doesn't necessarily mean you can do anything about it, but you're unsettled. That's a really good way to understand if you're having a fear response. In that place of being unsettled and having those physiological symptoms happen that are fear-based, you're going to try to cope with them somehow. And OCD is going to be a great example of that. Whether it's having intrusive thoughts, having obsessive intrusive thoughts, and then compulsive behavior to try to work with those intrusive thoughts, right? There's a vicious cycle that happens there. So let's break that down a little bit. Intrusive thoughts could be considered a symptom of fear. It's giving you a signal that, hey, I have an active fear response in my body right now, and intrusive thoughts are thoughts that make you uncomfortable and make you unsettled, and they're often impending doom thoughts or something really bad is going to happen. They are very fearful thoughts that make you incredibly uncomfortable. Compulsions are a way to try to cope with those intrusive thoughts, which is any kind of action or behavior that you may take to soothe yourself from that fear. But it doesn't help in any way. It just gets you stuck in a vicious fear cycle and with intrusive thoughts and compulsive behavior. And compulsive behaviors could be things like checking something excessively, trying to have some form of symmetry, cleaning, talking a lot, or seeking reassurance. Those are all compulsive behaviors to try to calm that fear response that is the fuel source for those intrusive thoughts. Let me repeat that one more time, because this is the different lens in which to look at mental health. The fuel source is fear, that emotion of fear. The emotions that cause suffering, one of them being fear. Fear is fully active in your system. You are now operating in the operating system of fear. That fear is going to give a signal somewhere to your body, which is highly physiological. You're going to feel it through heart palpitations, sweats, tension, changes in breathing pattern. And then that's going to also trigger certain thoughts to happen. The thoughts aren't the source of the fear. The fear is the source of the thoughts. One more time. The fear is the source of the thoughts. The thoughts start developing these random contents of bad things that could happen, impending doom, like worst case scenarios, and it's incessant and they're intrusive because we don't want them. They're unwanted. But that's your body telling you, and your brain telling you, and your mind telling you, like, I'm scared right now. I'm really, really scared. And I'm scared that this is going to happen and that's going to happen. And our minds are very creative to some really dark places, unfortunately. But it's not going to let loose. It's not going to let you go. It's not going to let you go. It's not going to go away. And because it is so uncomfortable to sit with, it is so impossible to deal with, you are going to find a way to cope with it or to manage it. And let me really highlight this part. Coping and managing is not resolution. Coping and managing gets you to the symptom, but not the root. The symptom right now that we're talking about is an intrusive thought. The root is fear. The coping, which is the compulsive behavior, is trying to calm the intrusive thought. It's not touching the fear at all. The fear is right here. The thought is right here. The compulsion is dealing with this. And because it's not addressing the source, it's not going to stop. It's not the cure for the problem. Okay? Now let's go back to those coping mechanisms through compulsions. They could be, repetitive behaviors, like rocking back and forth a lot, or checking something excessively, and then again, and then again, and then again. And the reason why it's such a repetitive behavior is because it's actually not addressing the fear. It's not addressing the root cause. It's just playing ping pong with the symptom rather than the cause. And so then it becomes more excessive, and it becomes more excessive, and then you do one more thing, and then you do one more thing, and then you do one more thing, and then it just expands to the point where it can get really debilitating. Now, another way is reassurance. Because there's so much doubt involved, because the intrusive thoughts can start coming in and really hijacking our sense of reality. It can get to the point of paranoia and delusions. It gets so bad because the fear is now going to the point of terror, where either physically you're going to feel panic and panic disorders and panic attacks, or paranoid thinking and delusional thinking to a very dark place. Now, and then, you're going to try to add compulsions to that to try to appease it. But it's, again, not addressing the fear at all. So the fear is now going to a point of terror, and it's getting worse, and we keep adding more things to the point that we shut down, or we really, really, really get hindered in many, many areas of our lives. And sometimes, unfortunately, we may get hospitalized. It's that debilitating at times. Going back to reassurance. Reassurance is a byproduct of wanting to kind of find clarity, because the intrusive thoughts have hijacked our sense of reality. Things are getting a bit distorted, And we're just trying to figure out and seek the truth of what's going on, because we don't really trust ourselves at that moment, and we don't trust the intrusive thoughts. And it's a good thing not to trust the intrusive thoughts, because they're not showing what's really going on in front of us. They're showing us how much fear is activated inside of us. And reassurance is another form of compulsion, because we keep asking and we keep asking and we keep talking about it and we keep talking about it. But again, it's just playing ping pong with that symptom. It's still not calming the fear down at all. So then that becomes excessive, and that might be oversharing or over talking and overthinking. And you can go to one person, then another person, then another person, then another source, then checking with Dr. Google and going to YouTube University and consulting with ChatGPT, and it's still not enough. It will never be enough, because it's playing ping pong with the symptom. Hopefully this breakdown is helping you understand why it's so important to deal with the root cause, which is the emotion that causes suffering, rather than getting stuck at a symptom, and understanding that how you're addressing that symptom may not even be dealing with the root cause whatsoever. Okay, so let's take a little bit further dive into more pop culture terminology, like people pleasing is a really good one. People pleasing is based off of fear. Also, if I don't show up the way you want me to show up, something bad could happen. I'm avoiding an issue or a bad thing to happen, whether it's to upset you, whether it's to lose favoritism, whether it's to disrupt a situation or a relationship. So then we completely abandon ourselves and we show up the way another person wants us to show up, out of fear. It is a fear response. So that's a behavior. We can even look at it as a way to cope in a relationship, relationally, in order to avoid having that fear, that fearful thought or that fearful experience to happen. But again, it's playing ping pong with the thought or the feeling or the worry that's happening, because it's not addressing the fear. And when we try to morph ourselves as a way to cope in a relationship to the other person, we're working with a moving target. It's not, there's no certainty in it, and there's no consistency in it. And so that will pique more hypervigilance and more actually fear and worry, because of the uncertainty aspect, which is also another symptom of having a fear response, needing consistency, needing certainty, needing to be in control. Now, the other term or concept to keep in mind is the sense of guilt, being motivated out of guilt. Guilt means I've done something wrong or I've done something bad. It's an internal judgment that you have on yourself. And anyone who's found guilty, I mean, that's an uncomfortable feeling to have. That is a fearful thing to try to come face to face with. So out of sheer guilt, we may do things that are inauthentic to us, or out of a survival response or out of a fear-based response. So we don't feel like we're doing something bad. Again, that's very relational and subjective, and that again works with a moving target. So it's really hard to get certainty and consistency in when we're operating off of guilt, because we're constantly going to find a reason and find a way to feel guilty about something. Again, playing ping pong, right? None of that is addressing the fear. When we address the fear, then we're not playing ping pong with the guilt and changing ourselves or being motivated to do something out of guilt. Another part of guilt to keep in mind is that it is an issue of having trust in yourself. there's a part of you that doesn't fully trust yourself. And that means there's a part of you that might be afraid of your own choices and your own actions. And that's where decision making might be really difficult, and needing to be codependent on other people's opinions and perspectives might be a way that you're trying to cope with that guilt, and constantly needing reassurance. Again, kind of going back to the OCD example. The other thing to keep in mind is having low confidence goes back to the same source of not trusting yourself. Confidence, literally, an easy way to understand confidence is I trust myself. When I trust myself, I walk around confidently. I walk around really assured with who I am. I'm comfortable with myself and my choices and my actions and my direction in life. But when I'm not confident in myself, that means I don't trust myself. I don't trust my choices. I don't trust my direction in life. And that is still rooted in fear. So when we address the fear and we move that out of the way, then we can start feeling more comfortable with our choices and not worry about them having these really bad consequences, but rather looking at them as a way of navigating, like, where did this choice take me? Did I like it? No, let me redirect. Did I like this? Yes, let me continue this. There's no more fear fueling those decisions or lack of decisions, the analysis paralysis kind of piece. And a final piece to just include here is just to see the different grades of all of this. Stress being a very socially accepted term. And I always say, if money is the root of all evil, then stress is the root of all disease and distress, because it is fear-based. And often we find it in our work settings or school settings, and if we feel like we're not performing, where performance anxiety or performance stress is rooted in fear. Like, if I don't get this right, if I don't achieve this, if I don't get the numbers, if I don't get the grade, if I don't hit my metrics or my quotas, something bad is gonna happen. I'll fail, I won't graduate, I'll get fired, all the impending doom stuff. It's just more socially acceptable, and it's seen in more social settings, in like I said, work and school, or performance-based settings in that sense. And then there are more severe forms of fear where it goes to sheer terror, which includes phobias, because that's a perceived threat of environments or predatory animals, or spiders and snakes and whatnot, and they're actually quite valid, right? Like phobias of heights, of phobias of spiders, phobias of snakes, because they are actually life-threatening in a way. But if it's holding you back in life, you want to address the fear first, and then you'll have a less prominent response to these types of phobias, which there are plenty of them, and I'm not going to list them here today. And then there is paranoid thinking, paranoid delusions, and psychotic disorders, which is a complete loss of touch with reality and what's actually going on in front of us, because we're so consumed with our thoughts, which are fueled by fear, and they're in a really dark place, which at this point, not only do I not trust myself, I don't trust the world in which I live in. So I'm going to go into my own world and make my own conclusions based off of my own narrative. And that's all still fear-based. Okay, so I hope that helped you understand a few symptoms, pop terminologies, and ways that we may be approaching ourselves in our lives through the root of fear. In the next video, we're gonna go into a deep dive into the root symptom of, the root emotion of grief and all of the symptoms and diagnosis that are associated with that. Thank you, and may peace be with you.